The Fourth Wing. Now, I know what you're thinking. What happened to the first three? I haven't read it, but I will soon. That's what this is. The introduction to not merely a review, nay, the beginning of a journey. A journey with me and you. That's right, I haven't read it yet, but by the end of this video, I will have. That's right. This is me from the past, but that's the secret. All videos are me from the past. But I intend to document my experience with this mythical, magical book, apparently. It's popular. People are hooting and hollering. I'm skeptical. But I like to be skeptical, and I like to be amazed. So, we're going to find out word by word, chapter by chapter, moment by moment, heartbreak by heartbreak, war by war. I don't know what this book is about. Dragons? We'll find out. But I'm excited. I'm very excited. I'm excited to find out if this hype is fueled by something perhaps other than reading enjoyment, perhaps money, perhaps bribe, perhaps algorithm, perhaps all of the above, perhaps none of the above, plus more. Because if there's one thing I hate more than anything, and I say this all the time, it's liars and cheats. I'm wearing white today to symbolize my innocence, my purity, before it's all tarnished, destroyed, as I delve into this world of magic and mischief. And if the mischief ain't there, you know I'm bringing it. Thank you, me from the past, you psychotic son of a gun. This is me from the not as far past. I have finished the book at this point. It took me 7 days, and I checked in every single day, giving small updates and small thoughts and stuff like that, which you're about to see. However, just as a warning, these are spoiler little check-ins. I'm giving my live reaction to a lot of like the bigger moments in the book. So if you don't want to be spoiled at all, I'll put a timestamp in the description. I know, how advanced of me. That'll just take you to my spoiler-free review at the end of the video. If you don't care about spoilers or you already read the book, go along with this journey with me. I feel like it was a really beneficial experience for me to do it this way. I think I said a lot of things that might provoke a little bit of discussion that I think if I would have waited till now to review it, I would have forgot kind of like the nitty-gritty stuff that I talked about. But then at the end of the video, it's going to be me in the same shirt, the same day, and I'm just going to do like a normal review of the book, but tacked on at the end. So if you want to skip all the spoiler stuff and just get to my thoughts, general vibe, should you read it type stuff, skip to the end, and I'll see you then. Just giving some way too early thoughts here. I'm only like 20 pages in, but I do like so far kind of the snippiness that we got going on in terms of the pace of the book. They got a bit of banter, mate, back and forth between some of the characters. I like the sister. The mother is a general. That's pretty interesting. And I like this personality of the main character we're getting here. I mean, it's not uncommon for the protagonist to be not like anybody else, right? A little bit different. But in this sense, she's just kind of a nerd. Right? And aren't we all just a little bit? Which I like so far, and I think I'm getting a lot of lore, but it's through dialogue, it's through natural conversation. I don't feel like I'm being info dumped yet, which is something that's very difficult at the beginning of fantasy series. I feel like it's the hardest. The first 100 pages or so are really critical of any new fantasy world that you're delving into. So this quick dialogue way of giving you lore about there's tests coming up, there's these dragons, you gotta ride them, you're gonna die, a lot of people die. The mom's in the military, high up in the military, very militaristic society, it feels like. Again, I'm literally only 20 pages in, but these are my immediate thoughts, and that's what this video is for. Is it not? Is it not? Back to the reading. About 55 pages in right now. The Kindle tells me it's 7%. I definitely wasn't expecting to be as intrigued by this general setup concept. The whole idea of like first year, second year, third year, the dynamics at play, like the ranks within the army. It's kind of like Harry Potter meets the homicidal children of Hunger Games, and there's like eventually going to be dragons at play, and they seem to be at least of some intelligence, that they like just like eat people and like execute rebellions and stuff like that. A lot of politics going on, and I'm not even going to try to absorb that. I'm thinking it'll come naturally. I still like the pace this lore is being divvied out, and I know there's going to be some romance seeping in somewhere, and I don't even need to make the prediction. This man, Dane, is a Gale of equivalent from the Hunger Games. This man will be friend-zoned lickety-split if I had to predict it, and I don't even have to. It's just a fact. And I'm going to guess that she's going to be locking lips with the Rebellion Boy before Act 2 is done. Am I right? No way. Oh, bad boy, you're not allowed to talk to him. He's so evil, he'll kill you instantly. And he doesn't kill her the first time they meet. They're locking lips. For sure. For sure. Not a doubt in my mind. Day 2 of reading the book. Violet is getting into her studies here. Got sorted into her wing. Take a wild guess which one. Of course, spurned on by none other than our future love interest. I'm betting my life on it. The Rebellion Boy himself. Although I will say, does his name not make him sound like he's the president of the frat at Dragon University? Xaden Ryerson. It's just a name that oozes the fact that this man is pounding natty lights after he gets home from dragon practice. But I don't blame the author for that. I'm sure writing fantasy names is a very hard thing to do. But also Jack Barlow, Jack Harlow, anyone? It's like the same name. But listen, also that guy Jack, he speaks like a Disney Channel bully. Like, Violet's literally just talking. She's spitting facts about military strategy, and he interrupts and says, like, in front of the class, "You're stupid. How could you be this dumb?" And the professor's like, "Why are you talking right now?" And I thought the same exact thing. And stuff like that makes me have a hard time getting a grip on how old these people are supposed to be, because they're kids, because they're in school, but they're training for war. I really don't have a grip on it. I'm assuming late teens, right? Like Katniss age. It's given more Hunger Games vibes than it is Harry Potter as it goes on, but like, I don't know. Day 3. We're over a quarter of the way through the book, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I like how this protagonist, Violet, is being portrayed right now in this stage of the book. I'm sure by the end, it'll be like she's the protagonist, she's the best fighter now because of her brains and her brawn, and she's the best dragon rider with the best dragon. I'm sure that's all going to come to pass. But right now, I like the characterization that she's like using her smarts to kind of play a little bit dirty with like her poisoning her opponents before she fights them. And I'm hoping that we get to see more of that in these other trials. Like she got like the gauntlet to jump through. That's the part I'm at right now. I just think it's interesting kind of having a protagonist that instead of like using, because usually if you're in a physical confrontations, like I feel like authors use like the Sherlock Holmes, like so smart, like in the Robert Downey Jr. movies where he's like, I know physical anatomy, so I know where to poke you to make you paralyzed, like that kind of smart. But really, hers is like her smart is like, I recognize my weaknesses, so I'm just gonna play a little bit dirty, which I feel like sets her up as a nice couple with the rebellion laddie himself, Mr. Frat Lord. And you know what? They had their little fight. They had their little tension moment. And I smelled it from a mile away, and she like finally admitted to herself, yeah, I kind of find him attractive. It's like, it took you this long to figure that out. He's kind of growing on me. I like his no-nonsense attitude. Definitely hometown boys and deep doo-doo. I could already tell I'm starting to shift more towards Xaden. The hometown hero. Listen, I'm already bored of him. I know he's going to have a little bit of a flip out. He keeps trying to send her home. If she went to the scribe school, we wouldn't have a book, my man. So just stop talking about it. And I know later on in the book she's going to be kissing the laddie rebellion boy. And he's going to be so mad. How can you do this? How could you do this? Shut up. I'm already dreading that part because you know it's coming. But Xaden and Violet, their reputation or their relationship is building rather. They kind of got a back and forth. And let's just skip to the chase. I know I'm jumping ahead here, but like she notices how he's kind of a good guy. He's not like the stereotypical rebellion boy that she thought he was. But then she keeps every time they meet. So when are you gonna kill me? He already said 1,000 times he's not gonna kill you. He doesn't want to kill you. Like read between the lines a little bit, girl. You're supposed to be smart. I know he's very attractive, but just think outside the box here, okay? That is one thing I know. If I'm going to give a criticism, 25% in, I noticed it's not so much that the author repeats a lot of information, because I don't really know if that's the case, but I feel like the characters repeat themselves a lot. And I think it's a very strange thing to have your characters do, is like say the same thing multiple times. There was a conversation earlier when they're in class, when they're talking about like the second years or the first years at the end of the year, if they don't get a dragon, they have to redo the year. And so this is a very small nitpicky thing, but they're like, oh, like she says in like the description, Violet's like, oh, well, this guy, he's a second year, but he does no dragon, so he's repeating the first year classes. And then on the next page, one of the characters is like, oh, I've heard that when first years don't find a dragon, they have to repeat second year as a first year again. And like, I had to go back. I'm like, didn't we just say this? Like, why is a character saying it like she just learned this? It just felt redundant, and that's what kind of Violet reminded me of when she just, every time she sees him. So when are you going to kill me, buddy boy? And he goes like, when I'm good and ready, wink, wink, I'm not going to kill you. I don't know. Maybe I'm losing my mind. 25% of the way there. I'm chugging along. Might finish it in a week. Maybe a little bit more than a week. 25% in 3 days. It's not the fastest I've ever read. It's kind of interesting looking at what authors decide to keep from our world and insert into their fantasy world. Like, you'll read a book like this and like continents and city names are all wacky and the names are mostly weird, other than Jack Barlow. But then they'll throw in like Wednesday and October. Like, that's what you decided to keep in this fantasy realm of magic and dragons. It's the Gregorian calendar that they follow. But Kentucky wasn't good enough for you. I don't know. It's just moments like this where I realize that they're all making it up as they go along. Fantasy authors, that is. And it has like one of those like self-aware moments. At least that's what I have. Something about Wednesday just really takes me out of this fantasy world. But I am enjoying it so far. We're on day 4, by the way. I'm not going to say I didn't know instantly when they mentioned that there was a super powerful black dragon that no one's ever bonded before in a long, long time, that our main character, Violet, wasn't instantly going to bond with it. However, I will credit it by saying by introducing the little small golden dragon, I did think then that was the ultra special one that she was going to get. So the fact that she ended up getting the first special one was kind of a twist, right? I mean, it's kind of like in Avatar, right, where Jake Sully rides the flying thing, and he gets one, but then he gets, like, the biggest one that no one's ever gotten before. It's like that, but the fact that made me think that, like, there was another special one, but that was different, made me forget about the first special one. So, in a way, I was surprised, and I like that the dragons talk. I'm a sucker for a talking dragon. I like The Hobbit, okay? And I like this guy already. I like this dragon, although it is really funny that he had a really long name. Tarnigan, son of Barnigan, born on the Darnigan line. But they didn't mention what day of the week he was born on. Probably a Wednesday. She's got both dragons. She's got both. It sounds like I'm being disingenuous. I am legitimately amazed. 2 dragons? Did not see that coming. This is the type of shit I live for. 2 dragons. Just over 300 pages, about 50% of the way through the book, and I'm just really enjoying how it's progressing, how like the dynamic of her and Xaden with like the mating of their dragons, and that if the dragon dies, they die, and the chain reaction, as well as like the magic system, how we're getting more information on that, and Violet's power with like the stopping time and stuff like that. Just the specific choices of like learning what that these riders get their powers from the dragon, the fact that like this is Violet's power and this is how it's connected to the other dragons. I just feel like every development has been exactly what I needed. Maybe it's just so satisfying, these choices, and I like how it puts like a kind of forced connection between Xaden and Violet, even though like they're definitely gonna smooch and they're just like so in denial about it. But I like that aspect of it. It's not just like, oh, like I care about you. It's like, no, like we need to hang out because you're going to die and then I'm going to die. It's as simple as that, and it's just like obviously they're gonna fall in love later. But the magic as well, the scene where she stops time for the first time, I just like literally said yes, yes, this is what we need. We need fantasy books where people can stop time. Right? We're getting close to time travel here. Maybe she could go back in time too. I'm not counting on that, but stopping time is such a cool power. But I'm really enjoying it so far. About halfway through the book. I got no complaints, and it's going to be interesting. I don't know if they're going to stay at the school to make predictions, I guess, for the second half of the book. First of all, hometown hero is already losing it. He's losing his mind, which I called ages ago, by the way. But predictions for the second half, obviously he's going to have a little freak out moment, and they're going to have a bigger confrontation and whatever. The relationship between Violet and the laddie, rebellion laddie himself, that's going to develop. They're going to start smooching, but I'm curious to see how much longer they'll stay at the school. I was thinking that like this whole like dragon bonding process would take a longer portion of the book, but the fact that the dragons are there, she's training with them, and we're still not quite halfway through the book, it makes me think that maybe the last quarter or so will be like fighting in the war and stuff like that, and getting the wider world, because I feel like right now they're kind of just like adding more steps onto the school process, if that makes sense, which is an interesting way to do it. I don't really understand how this school system works. And like I said, all the developments have been very satisfying so far, but it's kind of like, oh, you get to the school and you got to survive until you get to the ceremony. And then we got to the ceremony and it's like, well, you get the ceremony, you got to bond to the dragon. She bonds to the dragon. Well, after you bond to the dragon, it's not strong enough yet, so you could still die to other students. It's like, okay, well, after that point, when is it like solidified? Like it's like you're not gonna die anymore to like random students. I feel like that part's coming up. You can only drag that part out so long. We're gonna start getting some like war stuff, because I think that's starting to get interesting too, like the politics of the generals and the dragons and stuff like that. I'm talking a lot, but let's just get into it. What are we waiting for? I'll see me in the future. Day 5. I know what you're probably thinking. He is in the same room every single day. How do we know he's not just changing shirts and telling us it's different days? Well, let me tell you something, okay? Not all of us can disappear into a book dungeon where thousands of books line the shelves, or hop on down to the coffee shop where we can get a nice cozy read, okay? I am a normal person. I read in the living room, okay? It's the same room every day. I find chunks of my life and I dedicate that to reading. If that's not cozy enough for you, what do you want? You want some B-roll? I'll give you some B-roll. Is this what you wanted? Me eating toast? I bet you want some music underlaying this as well, huh? Some soft piano, perhaps? No, I'm going to let you sit with this. This is what you asked for. I was so focused on the bit that I forgot to talk about the book, but they did lock lips, by the way. I got to that point. I called it days ago, but I feel like this is one of those books where it's kind of predictable in terms of like the character development and who's going to get with who and how they're going to grow and evolve. But that doesn't mean it's not done well. I feel like you can have like genre cliches, but specifically with this book, the background of the world and like the intricacies of like the magic and how that stuff works is fresh enough to me that these more predictable things don't really bother me that much. But we are moving along. I think I'll probably finish this book in the next couple of days. I'm feeling energized. I want to get through this book. I'm really engaged. I'm kind of at a part now where I'm not entirely sure where it's going to evolve to, because I feel like the big thing was like getting to the dragons, and then from there the next driving force hasn't really been revealed yet. I mean, they're kind of like hinting at secret battles going on that they don't want to tell the public about, but I don't know if we're gonna have enough time to really get into like a war story after this, because we're so focused and entrenched in school, but who knows? I guess we're gonna find out. Day 6, just under 3/4 of the way through, and I do have a bone to pick. I think the last like 20% of this book or so, it's felt a little bit unfocused. And I've been saying that the last couple of days where I don't know where it's going. It just kind of feels like the book has been like moving the goalpost with this school thing. So now they're like deep into like the strategy and start of like these war games or whatever. But I feel like it's just unclear to me why this matters and why it should matter. Now, if you've stuck around the channel a little bit, sorry for the turbulence there, you know that I really like slice of life type books, slice of life fantasy, which is when it takes a little bit of a slower pace, focuses on characters. And this book is not quite doing that either. So it's not just a problem of, oh, I don't like books unless there's like a definite plot goal. It's just I don't know what these characters want, and I also don't know what is the structure of the school, because I feel like they're introducing obstacles as they go on. Like the war games, it's like you got to win them. You win them to get what? You get to go like the front lines or something, but then they just go to the front lines, and it's like, why do you want to be on the front lines? It's unclear what the structure of this school is. I feel like they keep introducing new aspects to like have new competitions or new drama, and it's not connected to the character's wants at all. I don't really know what Violet wants to be doing, because obviously like she's trying to get better with her dragon. I understand that, but does she want to be a good dragon rider, or does she still just want to live? And if that's just her goal, I feel like it doesn't align with these like new challenges and new inter squad drama that's going on. I just feel like it's a little bit unfocused now, and with that, my attention span starts to dwindle a little bit. I'm still enjoying the book. I think these characters are interesting enough that I'll stick with them. I'm just lacking that motivational drive of what do they want and why should I want them to get what they want when they don't even know what they want, if that makes any sense. I feel like if you're not going to have like a plot heavy thing, and for example, it would be like, there's an invasion right now, we need to stop it before they get the gem of magical souls or whatever. That's a goal, right? And some plot-driven books are very much like, okay, the book will end, it'll be a 3-act structure about this gem. It's like, oh, you get the point where it's like, oh, they lost it, all is lost, but then the heroic thing, they save the gem. Like, that's a very linear plot, right? Or you could have a very character-focused slice of life type thing, like she wants to be top of the class, right? And then we'll kind of break that up in sequential order. So even though it's not as like a world-ending type plot, we have a distinct character want. And I might be repeating myself here, but I really feel like these characters are kind of lacking purpose right now. And it's very relatable for people in school. And we're learning that they're around my age too. Oh, shit. I could be the laddie. I could be the laddie. Violet, stop. I could also be the hometown hero. Oh, Violet, stop! It's the same character. It's the same character. Everyone's telling her not to do things. We need a character that tells her to do things. The laddie kind of does himself, Rebellion laddie. He kind of dabbles into that a little bit. Anyway, I digress. We're about 3/4 of the way through, and we're keeping going. My Kindle says that I have 2.5 hours left in this book. How it knows how fast I read? Who knows? It doesn't take into account all the times I look at a page and then get distracted. I'm also a little bit frustrated about the pace of Xaden and Violet's relationship. Not just because I predicted it after 20 pages. I'm that smart. But ever since like they had their first kiss, I feel like the relationship has really been dragging its feet. Like they have tension or whatever. Your boy sees it from the jump. They kiss and then it's like, oh, but we don't actually like each other. It's like, okay, well then why'd you make out? And then they have a multi-page passion, right? If you know what I'm saying. And then after that, they're still like, oh, but I don't really know if I like him or not, or I don't know if he likes me back. And then it's like, they try to insert this like jealousy plot with this Imogen character who's about as well-rounded as a piece of cardboard. And it's just like, feels really disingenuous. And maybe their passion scene was just a little bit too early in this book, but I just don't buy like the will they, won't they at this point. Because I feel like after you have this, or multiple times this release of tension, it kind of takes the stakes out of it. Like I just read the scene where Xaden's like, oh, it's always been you, only nothing but you. Yeah, I got that when he was standing outside her bedroom every night for 3 months to protect her. And then when he barged into the room and killed everybody, that's a display of love for me. And this was 200 pages ago. So I feel like this back and forth, and that's kind of a theme I said earlier about like characters like repeating themselves like very early on about like information, stuff like that. But that seems to be a running theme with these characters, is that they're just not very quick to pick up on things. And the book started off, I really liked how Violet was the smart one. She's thinking outside the box. She's playing a little bit dirty. That's another thing that's kind of gone by the wayside here. She's kind of losing that specific edge. And I predicted this as well. I hoped it didn't happen, but it's starting to happen where she just kind of, she has the best magic. She's got like modifications to her dragon, but she didn't even come up with these modifications anymore. Like I feel like that would have been a good moment for her to think outside the box, play a little bit dirty by like thinking about the saddle and stuff like that. But she's getting all these tools and it just makes her the best, but she's not really using her brain anymore, which I thought was something that made her unique to begin with. And just to get all my complaints out of the way as well, I feel like sometimes, I don't know if it's the dialogue or it's the characterizations, they feel inconsistent with the world. Like there was a scene like where like Xaden's like throwing sarcastic thumbs up. I'm like, brother, you're in a militaristic medieval fantasy realm and you're giving me thumbs up. And there's something, I can't think of any specifics right now, but it's just like where they say things that it feels like straddles the line between this mythical world. They're saying words like, Zaragoth, the town of Ilbiad. And then I said, yo, brother, you have no riz. They're not saying slang like that, but you get the idea of like, it's a mixture of the modern and the unmodern mixing together in an unholy combination that kind of just takes me out of it. That's really a nitpick, but my general rule, as I'm not like a professional grammar lord, writing guy, but my general rule is if I notice something like that, like a specific nitpicky writer mistake, it means that something is going wrong. Because most of the time I can glide through a book, even like spelling errors, grammatical errors, I usually just glide over them. But if something like triggers, like an alarm goes off in my head, it gives me a hint, and multiple times as well, it gives me a hint that something's off. I feel like I got a good like sixth sense, like my spider sense is tingling, even if I can't quite pick up like, oh, the best writing practices to fix that stuff. It's just something that I noticed, and I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts about that, because I feel like, not to say it's not a hard thing to do with these, especially if you're writing a whole new fantasy world, and I made a joke about the Gregorian calendar earlier, but it's really knowing the style of your world, how much you want to blend, like, because not every fantasy book has to be thou must protect the queen, you know what I mean? But I feel like when you're throwing in big medieval fantasy worlds and magical name concepts, you either have to establish very early that they're using modern vernacular, or you got to pick the other. You can't straddle the line, jump back and forth, and it's hard too, because like it's obviously like the younger characters that are talking in this more modern way, and it is like a college setting, but it's not present in the older characters. So you can't just say, oh, it's an age thing. So like when they get older, they speak olden times. I don't know. It's just a little bit inconsistent, but I understand it's a very hard thing to do. And at the end of the day, despite me talking about this for a long time, it is a very nitpicky thing, but that's just a general thought I have about fantasy books. And I notice that the great fantasy books that I read are able to establish a consistent voice. That being said, overall, same thing what I said earlier today. I've read about 10% since then. Still the same thing, feels a little bit unfocused. We've been spending a lot of time with like this will they, won't they in the last 10% or so, and I'm just not buying it. And the goal is still unclear, and we're getting to the point where it's going to be the final snowball, right? Where we're going to be quickly approaching the end. So there's not a lot of time to set up a whole nother plot that's driving us to the finale. They're nearing like graduation, but it's only graduation for Xaden and not for everybody else. They're just going from first year to second year. So I don't know. I feel like there's going to have to be like, surprise attack, everyone get on your dragons, it's time for the final battle. There has to be that. And in fact, there's no other way I could see this book ending than surprise attack, everyone needs to get on their dragons and do a final battle against the griffins or something like that. Because there's no other stakes right now. I couldn't care less if they have another, oh, 4th squad's gonna fight 7th squad. Ooh, whoever wins gets a nice meal in the dungeon. Whoop-de-dang-do, right? I got bigger fish to fry. It's gonna be a surprise attack, but 20% left in the book. Time to announce it, guys. Time to announce it. And there's also so much like unresolved relationship or emotional stuff with like her and her mother. Maybe that's gonna be saved for the sequel, but I don't know. We'll see. Day 7, and I'm done. I thought the ending was very strong. Obviously, it came to pass, the final battle. Although I did like, again, it's a little bit cliche, like the final reveal of a secret. Oh, what was he hiding the whole time? It wasn't like a super powerful big secret, but I liked the reveal of what it was. It's not something that I exactly saw coming. I thought like with the foreshadowing of like the mythical creatures and her dad's old books and stuff like that, I thought it really worked there. And then the cliffhanger reveal, what? I was genuinely surprised, and I was excited to see it, which is a very positive thing, I think, to end a book with. When your cliffhanger hits, I've heard bad things about the sequel, but I've heard bad things about this one too, and I enjoyed it. So I guess now we're going into the full review. I think this is a fun little experiment. I like giving my thoughts as I read it, because there's so many small things and small thoughts that I have constantly when I'm reading. So being able to check in part by part just lets me like document that thought. And I feel like I remember my thoughts from earlier in the book more now that I said them out loud, which makes a lot of sense, I guess. In a way, this is kind of like annotating, but with videos, like checking in. So just for me personally, I had a lot of fun, but let's get to the meat and potatoes review. I think I'm going to do that one non-spoilers, just so if anybody doesn't want to be spoiled. I spoiled a lot of these things when I was talking about them. But overall, I think it's setting it up, the sequel, for an interesting conflict. The whole idea of like her hometown being the villains makes a lot of sense, because in retrospect, I had a lot of questions about their society. I'm like, do they really only care about war? And even though we knew from a long time that they were hiding information from like the students, I really didn't think much of it, which is my own fault. And it's kind of like Violet. The fact that Violet also didn't really think that much into it makes me feel like it was like a purposeful thing to kind of like hide that. I don't know. Overall, I thought it was really solid, but let's get into the review. The Fourth Wing. Having finished it, I'm going to give you the things that I like and tell you the things that I didn't like as well. And not to be reductive, but comparing it to the other very popular fantasy romance series of ACOTAR, I think this book blows ACOTAR out of the water. If you watched every single one of my clips, you know that I'm very, very positive about this book. I had a great time, to be honest with it. And I think the big comparison point I had, at least when reading those books, that made me think it's so much better, is I think the writing overall just feels a little bit more focused, or maybe a lot more focused. And in terms of like the world building, I think the Fourth Wing is a lot stronger for an interesting reason. I feel like ACOTAR kind of took like a wide but shallow approach to their world building, where it's kind of like you learn of information. You know there's a lot of places, but like they don't really stand up to much scrutiny, and you feel like you don't really know the vibe of the world that well. Whereas Fourth Wing, you really only get a pinhole glance at this world. It's this school for military training. It's the dragon school. They ride dragons, and it's a very militaristic society. There's some people fighting off in the outskirts of the world. This is the dragon school, though. Then that's literally all you get to see. You don't really see how this militaristic society, how that affects the common people. You don't really get any sense of like cultures or stuff like that. But it feels very, very purposeful in terms of the information that we're given. And I feel like this style of writing, while ACOTAR world, Fourth Wing world, both of them you have a lot of questions. I feel like I lean more towards ACOTAR questions being like, this is kind of dumb, why is this the case? Versus Fourth Wing, it's like, I wonder what this is like. I'm curious. I would like to know more. I would like to see this explored. And I feel like it's always good to be asking those kind of questions. The questions that leave you wanting more is a sign of good writing versus questions that are having you, or are you poking holes in somebody's work. I feel like they're completely different things. But going on to the things that I didn't like of Fourth Wing, and we're going to put the ACOTAR comparison aside, even though there's definitely more parallels, but we're kind of getting into that a little bit later. Going into the things that I didn't like, overall, I feel like it was very well-paced, very engaging. I was gripped in this story. There's a lot of good like twists and action moments to keep you engaged. But from, I would say, like the middle of the book towards the like getting towards the act 3, building up to the climax, I feel like it dragged its feet a little bit. It kind of loses its momentum where these characters are kind of retreading a specific part of their character development, and there's no goal of the characters, which I feel like is a very crucial thing for your characters to have at all times. Because as you know, I'm a big fan of slice of life, slower fantasy, right? Character building, not necessarily plot driven. If they have a goal, I'm fine with them taking 200 pages to even get close to the goal, as long as they're growing as people, they're thinking interesting thoughts and stuff like that. But there are major chunks of this book where I didn't know what the characters wanted, and I don't think they knew what they wanted. And that, coupled with no big plot events to build up to, or plot events affecting the characters directly, it kind of gives an unfocused, wandering type feel, which thankfully didn't go on for the entire second half of the book like I was worried it would. It did end up picking up towards the end, but there was a period there where, like, the first half, I'm like, this is so great. It feels so focused and direct, like the world building, and then it kind of lost it. And I'm like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what's driving this book in the second half. But I feel like probably what I imagine is the biggest complaint about this book, the biggest negative of this book, is that it does retread a lot of familiar ground, which I feel like does contribute to the first thing I said. The reason why I felt like we were dragging our feet a little bit is because I knew where she was going to go in terms of character arc after the specific point that she was in, if that makes sense. This book does a lot of cliches. And if you watched my day by day, you knew from the first day, as soon as we're introduced to all the characters that play in this world, I said, this is going to happen. This person's going to get with this person's going to turn out to be this kind of person, and this is how it's going to play out. And I was exactly right. And then the big reveal is like the dragons, right? Well, every writer gets a dragon. What kind of dragon is she going to get? I predicted it. I could see these things coming because this author isn't taking a lot of risks in terms of story structure. And I can see why a lot of people will be frustrated by that because it's kind of predictable. That being said, the reason why I still enjoy this book is, while grand scheme, grand tapestry of this story is very kind of paint by numbers, very predictable, the individual moments, the individual inclusions of very tiny twists, I feel like almost make it more enjoyable that I know where it's going. And if you watch the whole thing, you know those moments that I'm talking about here, and I won't spoil them here. That's the whole point of this part. But the author knows the general framework of a fantasy novel and general framework of a story arc and the types of romance fantasy tropes that are kind of in this thing. So by adding these small little twists, even though it does turn out the way we think it's going to turn out, there are small little nuggets, there's small little plot twists, there's small little lore inclusions that I feel like make it enjoyable and still make it fresh in a certain way. And sometimes she'll do this by one-upping these kind of results, like these specific character arcs, these specific reveals, like saying, it's like, you think this is going to happen because she's the main character, she's going to be like the best fight or whatever. But then she would add something like, but this is how she does it. And it kind of makes it a little bit fresh, or it'll be like lore, specific magic systems. Like that's another thing I enjoy about this book overall, is the magic system of, like, they bond with the dragons pick them. Okay, it sounds a lot like Harry Potter and the wands pick you, right? The dragons talk, we've read that before. It's kind of like How to Train Your Dragon in a lot of ways, except it gives you a magical power. Okay, that's fine, but the magical power has a potential to make you explode if you can't control it. I feel like that's pretty unique. You add enough cliche details, you kind of mix and grab and patchwork from other fantasy novels. Your Harry Potter is mixed with Hunger Games, mixed with Game of Thrones. By patching them all together, even though you could see all the inspirations, and it is kind of framework in that way, it's still fun and it's still well written, that even though it's cliche, it's still fun to read. Not everything has to be super unique and never before seen, I don't feel like anyway, if you're able to take your own spin on it and if it's still well written. Because by taking inspiration from all these different things, I feel like our end result is a unique story. I just enjoyed it. I don't know what else to tell you. And I think a common theme when I read popular books like this is I realize that it's not as bad as the haters declare. And while I could see people in the comments, it's plagiarism, it's she's just taking all the generic fantasy things and putting them all together in one book, kinda, but it's still well written, and I could see so easily why so many people love this book and love this series. And shout out to my cousin Amy for telling me to read this book. She said she wanted to shout out. If you watched this far, it was hidden for you. But I read it and I really did enjoy it. While it was familiar, and while it was a little bit cliched, it didn't feel uninspired, I guess is the kind of the summary of how I feel about it. I think that the uniqueness of her magic system, coupled with kind of familiar character archetypes, but unique interactions between the two of them, just made for a fun story. And I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot here. But it was just good. It was just good, and I enjoyed it. And like I said in earlier, this kind of checking in day by day as I read this book, I feel like I had a lot of fun doing it, and maybe that contributed to my enjoyment of the book because I was having so much fun talking about it live, even though it wasn't really live. It was just a great reading experience. And I'm quite frankly aghast that more people, at least in my corner of BookTube, haven't even given it a shot. It's very popular. It's made a lot of money. And you know what? Quite frankly, it deserves it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video and you want to see more like in the future. And as always, thanks for sticking around.